Today's case is both puzzling and infuriating. More than a decade later, there are still far more questions than answers. The police had a lot on their plate trying to solve this case, but it felt like a never-ending maze, with the end goal always out of reach. Interestingly, this case has also fueled tension between the Japanese and Korean people, as many in Japan believe the suspect was Korean. This is the mysterious murder of the Miyazawa family, also known as the Setagaya Family Murder. On the morning of New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2000, an elderly woman named Haruko visited her daughter's family home in Kamisoshigaya neighborhood of Setagaya. She was increasingly curious because the family hadn't picked up her call since that morning. Maybe she thought they were busy preparing for the new year and decided to check on them. Since she lived fairly close, getting to the house wasn't a problem. Around 10 a.m., Haruko arrived at the house and rang the bell. It chimed, but nobody answered. She pressed the bell again, but it was still quiet inside. Suspicious, Haruko entered the house, which was surprisingly unlocked. She called out again, but there was no response. She made her way inside and then saw them. It was a sight no mother should ever see. There lay the lifeless body of Mikio Miyazawa, her son-in-law, on the floor near the stairs. Soon she found the bodies of her daughter, Yasuko Miyazawa, and her two small grandchildren, Nina and Rei Miyazawa. The discovery shocked Haruko to the core, and she staggered outside, screaming and pleading for help. Concerned neighbors, understanding the emergency, quickly called the police. So who were the Miyazawas? They were a content family of 4 living in a peaceful suburban neighborhood. The family consisted of father Mikio Miyazawa, 44, wife Yasuko, 41, son Rei, 6 years old, and a daughter Nina, 8 years old. Mikio was a home-based businessman working for Interbrand, an international media and marketing firm headquartered in London, where he developed corporate identities. Yasuko was a well-liked teacher, respected by her coworkers, students, and parents. When the Miyazawa family relocated to Kamisoshigaya Street in 1991, the area was densely populated, with over 200 residential buildings. However, a few years later, the council decided to turn the area into a park for recreation, purchasing every nearby house to make room for the project. The neighbors of the Miyazawa family soon sold their land to the city and moved away. By the year 2000, only 4 houses remained. The Miyazawas had planned to eventually leave Kamisoshigaya as well, but Yasuko was hesitant due to concerns about how her children, especially her youngest child Rei, would adjust to a new environment. Rei had a developmental disability and was receiving specialized treatment for a speech handicap. Because of this, the family decided to delay their move and stayed until the tragic murder occurred. When the police arrived at the scene, they found the residence in disarray. The living room sofa seemed to have been used as a makeshift bed, and numerous documents were scattered around. In the bathroom, investigators discovered a missing drawer and its contents inside the bathtub, along with trash such as food packages, ice cream cups, and bloody bandages. The toilet showed evidence that someone had defecated without flushing. Initially thinking it was a robbery gone wrong, the police soon dismissed this idea as nothing appeared to be missing except for Mikio's jacket. Yasuko's personal belongings, including her 2 handbags, Mikio's wallet, house keys, and various documents were found thrown inside the toilet bowl. The suspect stole only 150,000 yen from Miyazawa's house. But a large amount of cash, approximately 190,000 yen, and foreign currency totaling to 5,000 yen were found in Mikio's study, left untouched. Strangely enough, the police immediately discovered the offender's entire clothing on the sofa in the living room. This included a black padded jacket from Uniqlo, black one-size gloves, a long-sleeved shirt, a gray knit bucket hat, a muffler, a pair of Slazenger shoes, and a small fanny pack. Some of these items had the scent of Drakkar Noir, a popular French perfume in Japan at the time. Additionally, handkerchiefs were found, leading authorities to believe they were used to clean and bundle the offender's weapons. As investigations continued, the sequence of the crime became clearer. The assailant climbed from the back of the house and removed the railing of the second-floor restroom. He first entered Ray's bedroom, which is adjacent to the restroom, and was surprised to find someone in the bed. Without hesitation, he strangled the young child, who attempted to resist but was overpowered. The attacker used all his might to choke Ray until he stopped breathing, ending the child's life tragically. Mikio likely became worried after hearing thudding and movement upstairs. He decided to check on his son, and upon reaching the top of the stairs, was attacked with a sashimi knife. He sustained numerous stab wounds, including one to the head, where a fragment of the knife was found lodged in his skull. The commotion awoke Yasuko and Nina, whose room was accessible through a foldable ladder from the second floor. The perpetrator then went to stab Nina and Yasuko multiple times. Realizing his knife was broken from the previous attack on Mikio, he momentarily left to grab another knife. During this brief respite, Yasuko, despite bleeding profusely, carried Nina down the stairs, thinking the assailant had left. Unfortunately, the murderer had taken one of their kitchen knives and resumed his vicious attack. Yasuko and Nina suffered several stab wounds to their heads, faces, and other parts of their bodies. Yasuko clearly fought hard to protect her daughter, as evidenced by the defense wounds on her body, but their efforts were in vain. The two were found dead, lying opposite each other. The murderer wounded his hand during the assault and dressed the wound with bandages from the family's first aid kit. What he did next perplexes investigators to this day. After killing the family, he spent the entire night at the house, staying for about half a day. The perpetrator killed the 4 victims around 11 p.m. and then wandered around the house until after 1 a.m. the next day. He brazenly helped himself to some barley tea, ice cream, and melon from the refrigerator and surfed the internet on Mikio's computer. He even slept on the living room sofa, just steps away from Mikio's body. He even attempted to use Mikio's credit card to purchase theater tickets at 1:18 in the morning, but gave up because he didn't know the credit card details. He left the house around 9 or 10 in the morning, just before Haruko Asai arrived. The suspect made no attempt to erase his presence. When the police arrived, they found the partially eaten ice cream container still on the table. The perpetrator also left fingerprints in various places. In a particularly bizarre act, he used the bathroom and didn't flush. With all the evidence left at the scene, many thought this would be an easy case to solve. The perpetrator left behind his clothes, feces DNA, fingerprints, and footprints. But despite a massive investigation, the authorities couldn't find any clues, which angered the public. This frustration led to the popular foreign perpetrator theory, with a particular focus on the idea that the killer was Korean. First, the Slazenger shoes. One reason the suspect was believed to be Korean was because of his shoes and bag. The suspect's shoes, identified through footprints, were size 280 millimeters from the British brand Slazenger. Rumors circulated that this brand was only produced in a factory in Korea and that the 280 millimeter size was never sold in Japan. Additionally, the bag left behind by the suspect was also said to be manufactured only in Korea. However, it was later revealed that both the shoes and the bag were also available for sale in Japan. The baseless suspicion that the perpetrator was Korean quickly turned into certainty, leading to continuous rationalizations to fit this narrative. This culminated on December 28, 2002, when Japan's Asahi TV aired a program where the show brought in an American psychic investigator to create a composite sketch of the suspect. Although the resulting sketch was clearly implausible, the broadcast claimed that it's not a typical Japanese face, but one commonly seen in Koreans. The theory that the perpetrator was Korean gained even more traction in 2005 when the suspect's DNA analysis results were made public. DNA testing revealed that the suspect was no older than 35 years old at the time of the crime. The analysis also revealed that the suspect's father was of Asian descent and his mother was of European descent. Moreover, it indicated that the paternal DNA was about 3 times more likely to be found in Koreans than in Japanese. Also in the folds of a carrying pouch he left behind were grains of sand of a type not found in Japan. Consequently, the investigation team narrowed the suspect range to Korean mixed-race individuals and sent investigators to South Korea to verify this. However, this effort was in vain, as no matches were found when comparing the suspect's fingerprints with those of Koreans. Shortly after the case became known, the investigation team received a credible lead. The tip reported that around 5:20 p.m. on December 31st, a man with a deep wound on his right hand was seen at Tobuniko Station, about a 3-hour subway ride from Setagaya Station. After getting off the train, the man received treatment from a station attendant. When asked how he got the injury, the man replied, "I dropped a knife on my hand inside the train." However, no blood stains were found inside the train. It was a golden opportunity to identify the suspect, but the authorities missed it. They placed too much trust in the fingerprints left at the scene, believing they would lead to the perpetrator, and thus did not give much significance to the tips they received. When the case went cold, the investigation team revisited these tips and began a thorough investigation, but by then, 10 months had passed and no clues emerged. Another sighting came from a taxi driver and a woman. The taxi driver claimed he picked up 3 men near the Miyazawa house, and the ride was quiet. When they got off, there were blood stains on the seat. A woman claimed she almost ran over a man running from the Miyazawa house, but this information was dismissed by the police, who found no such bloodstains as claimed. We are all puzzled as to why this seemingly normal family was murdered in cold blood. The perpetrator didn't even spare the lives of the children. The biggest question is the motive, which remains unidentified. To suggest this was a random killing seems too absurd, especially given the unique pattern of the murder and the evidence suggesting the individual knew he wouldn't be caught easily. One theory is that the intruder was trying to rob the family. The theory that the perpetrator was a robber targeting money was suggested because he stole 150,000 yen from the house. However, it was puzzling that he left behind 190,000 yen. If it was about money, it didn't make sense for the perpetrator to go up to the 3rd floor to attack Yasuko and Nina while they were sleeping, drag them down to the 2nd floor, and then kill them. Instead, he strangely stayed in the house for quite some time, making himself at home after the crime. Also, the perpetrator left behind numerous items, including the murder weapons, almost as if putting them on display. This behavior is not typical of a robber who came for the money. The second theory is a personal grudge or hatred. Some sources note that the severity of the attack varied, with Yasuko and Nina sustaining more vicious injuries to their heads and faces. This has led to speculation that the perpetrator might have harbored a specific hatred towards the family, or more particularly towards women, resulting in the more brutal attacks on the female victims. The third theory suggests the possibility of an assassination, and some people argued that a Korean assassin was involved. The suspicion that the perpetrator was Korean persisted for many years after the incident. In 2015, Japanese author Fumiya Ichihashi claimed in his book titled The Setagaya Family Murder Case, 15 years later, the truth, that the killer was Korean. He alleged that the mastermind behind the crime was a real estate agent of Korean descent, Kaneda Hidemichi, whose Korean name was Kim Soo-do, targeting the Miyazawa family's property. Ichihashi also suggested that the perpetrator was a gangster named Iin from Suwon, Gyeonggi Province. Ichihashi also tells the story of Miyazawa being involved with the Korean Unification Church. Since they didn't want to sell off their land to church, they got murdered by an assassin. However, this book, while offering a compelling narrative, does not provide concrete evidence or lead to any arrests. Takeshi Tsuchida, a former detective who investigated the case, dismissed Ichihashi's claims as 100% nonsense in a 2019 interview with ABC News. In the end, this remains one of the most macabre events in Japanese history. It is unfortunate that such a tragic case has become a catalyst for conflict between some Japanese and Koreans, leading to blame and instigating hatred. However, we must remember that the most important goal is to find the killer and bring justice to the Miyazawa family. They are still seeking answers. The Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department has dedicated over 280,000 investigators to solving this case over more than 2 decades. They have compared a total of 50 million fingerprints and conducted more than 1.3 million DNA tests, yet they have not been able to identify a single suspect. The government has issued a 20 million yen reward for information leading to the arrest of the killer, and the reward still stands. For both the bereaved family and the police, this case remains ongoing. The authorities continue to investigate, allocating 38 personnel each year to the case. The continued investigation owes much to the efforts of the bereaved families. In 2009, Mikio's father, Yoshiyuki Miyazawa, who was then 80 years old, founded an association for the families of murder victims and campaigned for the abolition of the statute of limitations on heinous crimes. And due to their efforts, the following year saw the passage of an amendment to the Criminal Procedure Act, abolishing the statute of limitations for this case and other unsolved cases from the past. But unfortunately, Mikio's father passed away before he ever found out who killed his son. In 2020, Yasuko's sister, Irie, managed to save the family home from being demolished by appealing for it to be preserved until the killer is caught. She even opened the house to the media for the first time, tearfully saying, "It still feels like my heart is being torn apart when I enter this house." She gave a tour around the house, hoping that seeing how the family lived might help uncover some clues. While she knows she can't bring her sister back, she's determined to catch the killer and get justice for her family. That was the tragic story of the Miyazawa family. The perpetrator is still out there, and nobody knows if he will ever be caught. It's a gut-wrenching fate that befell the family, and it's even more tragic considering that 2 small, innocent children suffered such a gruesome fate at a very young age. May the Miyazawa family's souls get the justice they deserve, and may the victim's family find the closure they so desperately need. It's important to remember that behind every unsolved case are real people whose lives were forever changed. Let us hope that someday the truth will come to light and the killer will be brought to justice and the family can finally find peace. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.